Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Doug Ward. Thank you for watching this video of Business 670 for Chapter 5. But before we get into Chapter 5, I do want to cover a few things that we've covered in the first couple of weeks. One of those being the ABLE model. And the ABLE model looks at customer needs, customer groups, and the technologies that they're going to be utilizing in order to meet the customer needs. But it's equally important to understand who your customers are, the groups that you're trying to meet their needs of. And typically, this model is used for process of defining mission, vision, and strategy for a company. Then we talked about a SWOT, where you're familiar with what the SWOT is, and the SWOT really is used to analyze that individual company. It's not an industry-wide, but for an individual company. And it's typically used to maybe create or affirm or even fine-tune a company's specific business model so that it has the opportunity to identify opportunities and strengths to align their resources and capabilities so that they can respond to the environment which they operate in. Then we had Porter's 5 forces: the risk of entry, rivalry, bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of buyers, and substitute products. And this model is really used to determine how attractive an industry is, but equally important to look at those companies that's already in that industry and see what threat potential exists from new entrants into that particular industry. And this is used for industry analysis more so than a company analysis. And one of the things that I forgot to mention earlier, that the threats of substitutes, where the consumer has substitute products which to go buy from, one of the best strategies that you could do if you are a company that's already established in that particular industry, when you have a threat of substitutes, you become the new substitute. And you change your processes, you change your pricing scheme, you change your economies of scales, your marketing, your research and development, whatever you need to do to maintain your market share by becoming the substitutes so that those new customers will continue or come over and buy from you. Then we talked about the industry life cycle of embryonic growth, shakeout, mature, and decline stage. And I think we even had a test example to do on that one. And this is kind of a generalization model that's used for a particular industry on how the competitive forces affects its industry life cycle. And we know that an industry as well as a business or a particular company can have multiple life cycles over a season, over a period of years, or over its entire life. And then we talked about the building blocks of competitive advantage of efficiency, quality, innovation, customer responsiveness. And that model is used to identify company-specific functional capabilities, or what are their distinct competencies that they have to maintain their market share. So with that, I just want to kind of bring that back up and keep that out in forefront to you, because you're going to be using these models when you get over in Business 671. So understanding these models and looking at it from an industry or company perspective, and in your writings and in your analysis, move away from describing what it is. It's okay to describe what it is, but ask yourself for that particular company or that particular industry, what's the so what? What is the efficiency? What are those things specifically that industry or that company is doing, say, to build upon their functional capabilities, their distinctive competencies, like the building blocks, not just to describe what efficiency is or innovation, but exactly what are they doing in order to maintain their market share. So today we're going to talk about Chapter 5, and Chapter 5 really looks at, it's a formulation of the business level strategy. And the business level strategy refers to that overreaching competitive theme of a company in a given market. And at its most basic concepts, it really is what the company does in order to meet its customers' needs and desires, how the company is trying to satisfy that, and how the company decides what strategies they need to implement to ensure the customers' needs and desires are met. In fact, the customers are the foundation of a business, or the foundations or the origins of a business level strategy. And what we're going to look at today will be how managers decide what business level strategy to pursue, how they go about executing that strategy to a sustainable competitive advantage. And we'll look at it from two specific arenas as we start this discussion. Is going to look at how they can compete in the market, one by lowering cost, and the other one by differentiating their goods or services, that they offering something different that their rivals are not doing, so that it may create more value. And then we'll talk about consumer choice and market segmentation. So with that, let's look at the learning objectives. What is the difference between low cost and differentiating strategies? How we're going to attain that differential or low cost strategy that gives that company that competitive advantage, and how we can go about executing some of this business level strategy, as well as what do we mean by the term value innovation, the concept of the blue ocean strategy, is what we hope to accomplish in this particular video tonight. And strategy really is about the search for competitive advantage. And at the most fundamental level, that competitive advantage it can be attained if that business can lower costs relative to its rivals. Now, if it can differentiate itself for its product offering from those rivals, therefore creating more value. So at the end of the day, it really boils down to how can I take advantage to lower prices to differentiate my product so that I can create more value for that consumer, which hopefully will result into more sales, more revenue potential, and more profit. And for a for-profit company, that's what you should be striving to do. But equally important, as we've already discussed, that even for a government entity or for a nonprofit, it's about maximizing tax dollars or the donations that's given from the donors. So the concepts are basically the same, but from a business level strategy is what can that company do to give us a competitive advantage and how it can position itself in the different markets or industry that it finds itself in. So lowering cost. In the commodity markets, when we think about food, gas, and oil, and things like that, clothing, the competitive advantage goes to the company that simply has the lowest cost. And the lowest cost will enable that company to make a profit at a price point where its rivals are losing money. And low cost can also allow a company to undercut rivals on price, hopefully gain more market share. Hopefully it will be sustainable. I would say that if a company with lower prices to gain market share, that lowering the pricing would not be a long-term strategy, but a short-term strategy to grow its market. And then hopefully they create brand loyalty and customer loyalty where they would stay with that, or they differentiate the product from the standpoint that the customers stay. And by gaining market share, hopefully that will increase profitability, as we've already discussed. But as we indicated earlier, being a low-cost player in an industry can be an advantageous position. But on the other hand, if you're not very careful, you can price yourself where you're having difficulties meeting all the budgetary constraints of the organization as well. It works in some cases it does not work as well as you would like to think. Again, I think it's a short-term strategy, but I'm not convinced that it is truly a long-term strategy. Differentiation implies distinguishing oneself from rivals. And I'm on page 154, 155, 156 now. in our textbook in chapter 5. Again, differentiation implies distinguishing oneself from rivals by offering something different, something unique, something that's creating customer perceptions of value or meeting that customer demand, or something that's just frankly hard to match. There's many ways in which a company can differentiate itself from its rivals. Could be through superior reliability, could be through better design, could be better functions, better features, better after point sales service, better after sales service and support. It could be a whole host of things that's really driving that differentiation. And when we do a differentiation strategy, it typically gives a company two advantages. It can allow that company to charge a premium price for its goods or services, should it choose to do so. If you think about Starbucks, they're a brand of coffees where they charge a premium price. If you think about Apple products, where they charge a premium price. If you think about luxury automobiles, premium price. And the second thing it can do, it can help the company grow overall demand and capture market share from its rivals. So low cost differentiation are two key components when it comes to creating value for its customers and hopefully increasing demand, lowering costs equates to more profitability. This figure 5.1 is over on page 158, and it's really giving you two different options for exploiting differentiation, which we talked about. Option number one is to increase the price, and option number two is moderate or no price increase. Either one of those, depending on what is being offered, how it's being offered, could increase market share, leading to higher profitability, which is hopefully what you want to do as an organization. The thrust of looking at this differentiation, the low-cost trade-off, is really, there's two different ways in which a company can gain a competitive advantage when it comes to this differentiation low-cost trade-off. The company that is striving for the lower cost does everything it can to be more productive and drive down its cost structure. It could be they're buying lower cost materials, but they may have cheaper labor. They may be using innovation technologies to advance to lower their operating and their manufacturing costs. Could be economies of scales. Could be a whole host of things. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to be more productive to lower cost. And an enterprise or a business that's striving for differentiation typically has to bear higher costs to achieve that differentiation. And that presenting the choice between differentiation and lower cost in the terms of something like this, the successful differentiator might be able to subsequently reduce costs if that differentiation leads to significant demand growth and attainment of scale of economies. But probably the relationship between low cost and differentiation is a little bit more difficult to achieve. And the strategy is not so much about making discrete choices as much as it is about deciding what's going to be the right balance between differentiation and low cost. Again, think about the auto industry when it comes to the different type of models, the different type of accessories that you can buy. If you can imagine that if every automobile was truly built from the ground up different, how much that would cost the American consumer. So the car manufacturing industry really has a basic model that typically they can change the frame, change the motors, change the drivetrain, change the electronics. A lot of the seats, things of that nature are used in the same model of vehicle, but may have different options associated with that vehicle. That's kind of like a hybrid between differentiation and low cost. So they're using economies of scale in the production to drive down low costs, but they're using differentiation strategies so that they can sell an automobile that you and I, the American consumer, will go out and purchase. And certainly, if you want a custom-made automobile from one of the big three, then you can certainly get that. And as you know, it's a much higher cost. When we look at this figure on page 159, what it's trying to illustrate is what is known as the efficiency frontier. And it's looking at this efficiency frontier, shows all the different positions in this example where a company can adopt with regard to differentiation and low cost, assuming that a lot of its internal functions and organizational arrangements are configured in such a manner that it is going to support that particular position. And you can see the differences of the different name companies of Eddie Bauer, Kmart, Walmart, Gap, and Nordstrom. And if you look at how this convex shape, it is convex because it has diminishing returns, which implies that when an enterprise already has a significant differentiation built into its product offering, increasing differentiation by relatively small amounts requires significant additional cost. And the converse holds when a company already has a low-cost structure, like Walmart there, as you can see, and it has to give up a lot of differentiation in its product offering to get additional low cost. But that is the differentiation low-cost trade-off curve. Talk about efficiency frontier here on page 159. And in this efficiency frontier, one of the key points is that there are often multiple positions of differentiation low-cost continuum that are viable in the sense that they have enough demand to support a specific offering. The task for you and I as strategists and as managers is to identify a position in our industry that is viable and where we can configure our functions and rearrange our organizational to ensure that our business can run efficiently and effectively as we can in order for us to reach that new frontier. And to successfully implement such a business level strategy and get into the efficiency frontier, we must be pursuing the right functional level strategies and must be appropriately organized. Business level strategy, which we're talking here, functional level strategy, which we didn't talk about, but as you're going to talk about in Business 671, which is over in chapter 4, and organizational arrangements must all be in alignment with each other. And again, functional level strategy will be that strategy that you're going to cover a lot when you get into chapter 4 in Business 671. So to get this efficiency frontier, this is what a lot of companies must do. They have to pursue the right functional level strategy. They got to be properly organized. They got to ensure that its business level strategy and functional strategy and organizational strategy all in alignment. And very quickly, a functional level strategy from over in chapter 4, again, what you'll study when you get into Business 671. Those strategies are really aimed at improving the effectiveness of a company's operations and how its abilities to attain superior efficiency, quality, innovation, and customer responsiveness, which is the 4 building blocks of the competitive advantage. So you can start to see now how some of this stuff are interrelated and how they start to tie back together. Hopefully you're connecting those dots. Now, as we think about this, improving one's performance through innovation, the term value innovation is used, and value innovations is over on page 160. That value innovation is really what happens when innovation pushes out the efficiency frontier in an industry which allows for greater value to be offered through superior differentiation at lower cost than previously thought possible. Yeah, when a company is able to do this, they may be the pioneer in a new process innovation that leads to this value innovation, and as it effectively reorganizes and changes their company, that may lead to changes in the industry, and hopefully those changes will allow that company within that industry to outperform its rivals. And you see that over on page 161, where they give us a chart where this was the original curve. Now we have expanded the value innovation through this value innovation here, and now we push that curve out even further. So that's really what that is referring to, and you find that over on page, again, 161. And this example is talking about the PC industry. And if any industry that's constantly evolving, constantly changing, is certainly this industry here. And as we know, technology is changing the way we do business. And even in this industry, when this first came out, everyone had a desktop computer. Then it moved to a laptop computer. Then it moved to mobile technology. Now it's tablets. So it's constantly re-evolving. It's constantly changing itself. And it's constantly at a point now where the desktop is really becoming archaic, and the desktop is really becoming archaic as well as more and more companies move to mobile technology. So let's talk about market segmentation. And market segmentation really asks the question is, who's our customers? Over on page 161. And the business level strategy begins with who are our customers. It starts with deciding who the company is going to serve, what needs or desires is trying to satisfy, and how it's going to satisfy those needs. And if you recall, I'm sorry, I moved. Yep. Okay, there you go. When we talk about the deciding who the company is going to serve, what the needs or desires are trying to satisfy, and how is it going to satisfy those needs. Again, tying back to Abel's model, there's another connection back over to a previous model that you've already gained some insight with and actually had the opportunity to use in order to analyze the company. This is where understanding your market, understanding your customers, their buying behaviors, their spending power, the demographics of the market, such things as we saw in lecture number 2, where they were the market segmentation from people moving into a region, then leaving that region, and what some of the reasons behind that. That all ties together with understanding the business level strategy. It begins with the customer. And one of the fundamental questions that any company faces when it's talking about this market segmentation is whether to recognize the difference in the customers. And if it does that, how does it go about tailoring its approach, its products, its goods or services to ensure that that customer segment or segments that it decides to serve in is that it can meet that need. So the first step toward answering this question is to segment the market according to the differences in customer demographics, customer needs, customer desires. So understanding, doing a demographic analysis as part of your overall analysis, which we saw in lecture 2, you will carry forward over into Business 671. And part of that market segmentation, certainly over on page 162, 163, certainly could be subdividing that market into clearly identifiable groups of customers with similar needs, desires, and demand characteristics. customers within these segments are relatively homogeneous, and they may differ in important ways. And three approaches that you typically will see in the market segmentation is those approaches typically that companies will adopt. One is to choose not to tailor, or in other words, have a standardization strategy, which is not going to tailor to different offerings to different segments. Instead, it's going to produce and sell a standardized product that is targeted at the average customer. And a lot of your computer manufacturers are doing that. They may allow you to tailor some complementary software. They may allow you to change the memory, change the hard drive size, add additional graphics. But at the end of the day, the laptop or that mobile technology still will be, it's going to be built to the average customer. The auto industry does the very same thing, as you can imagine. The second approach is to recognize that differences exist, and how do I go about creating those differences through product offerings for the different segments. And the third approach is to target only a limited number of market segments, so have a focused strategy, and to become the very best at doing that. If you think about Whole Foods when it comes to organic foods, if you think about Starbucks and their coffee offerings, if you think about some of the auto industry who only offers luxury automobiles, they are really focusing their strategy. Or if you think about sports cars like a Porsche or Lamborghini, those type of high-end sports cars, that's really to a niche market, is not to the average customer. And when managers decide to do this, they have to be willing to ignore the different segments and produce a standardized product for the average customer. When they're doing that, again, they're doing the standardization strategy. When they want to serve many segments or even the entire market, producing different offerings for different segments, then they're pursuing the segmentation strategy. When they decide to serve a limited number of segments or just one segment, then they're really pursuing a focus strategy, as we have already discussed. And as we think about these different type of strategies, really that standardization strategy is typically associated with low cost, because that segmentation strategy, it's a standardized strategy. It's almost like the Henry Ford back in the 1900s. One color, you can have any color you want as long as it's black. He was just going to make one automobile, and it really was take it or leave it type of a strategy. And certainly, as you can imagine, as you go across this chart from a standardization to a focus strategy, as you try to meet the needs of different segments, then certainly your cost is going to go up in those product offerings, because you have some unique manufacturing costs that you're going to pass on. And it certainly makes it more difficult to take advantage of economies of scale when you're doing a focus strategy per se. But economies of scale works very good in a standardization strategy. That focused strategy, you typically have to add features and functions. If you look at the two extremes from a standardization to a focus strategy, where the focus strategy, you have to add different features and functions to your product to appeal to the higher income customers, which will typically raise the cost. And you typically have a relatively limited demand associated with serving just that one segment. So it makes it much more difficult to attain the economies of scale. So it's really, you see the extreme, and I guess the segmentation strategy, if I had to use this term, would be the best of both, but it's really going to be dependent on the type of market that you find yourself in. And coming back to asking the three questions that Abel wants you to look at is the customer's need, who's your customer groups, and what technologies or functional capabilities that you have to meet those. So here's another example of the different generic business level strategies over on page 165. And this is the verbiage that goes with that figure 5.4, again, there on 165. It is really going to, again, depending on the type of strategy the company does it, the type of different market segmentations that it wants to go into. Could be, in some cases, they're going to be pursuing the broad, low-cost strategy, all the way up to the point where they'll be looking at the broad differentiation strategy. So it's really going to depend on the different type of market, the different type of focus or niche strategy that they're trying to pursue. There's no one best way of competing in the industry. Some companies will only focus on one strategy. Again, if you think about the niche market, if you think about Apple, think about Starbucks, think about Whole Foods. If you want that generic business level strategy, think about Walmart and the commodity products that they offer. So it's really going to depend on the type of strategy and the type of business or industry that that business is in, to ensure that the market that they're serving, that they have product that matches their strategy, and that they're aligning their functional capabilities and their organization in such a way so that that strategy can be well executed, is what it really comes down to at the end of the day. So there's really no one best way to do it. It's just going to be the way that particular industry will do it, or that particular company will do in their specific industry. Michael Porter, in this figures of 4, 5, and 6, argues that becoming stuck in the middle, you typically will experience poor performance, and because there's limited value in staying in the middle with the ever-changing global economy that we find ourselves in. And typically there's a couple of important caveats that he typically discusses over on page 165, 166. And if you think about those improvements in the process and product, a company can push out the efficiency frontier in its industry and redefining what is possible, and hopefully deliver more differentiation and lower cost than its rivals. Or in some cases, a company might find itself in the fortunate position of being both the differentiated player as well as the provider of the low cost, or being in that low cost position. Could be both. Typically though, if you sit still, if you sit in the middle, if you're not using innovation, if you're not constantly scanning the marketplace, the industry that's going on, typically what you will find out is that while you're sitting there, your competitors are catching up with you, and you have to make a choice whether you're going to be emphasizing low cost or differentiation, or both. It's important for a differentiated company to recognize that it cannot take its eye off the efficiency ball. Just trying to do low cost, you cannot ignore product differentiation. Why not? Because you and I as customers, our needs are constantly changing. Our desires, our wants are constantly changing. The task that's facing any company pursuing a differentiation strategy is to be efficient as they possibly can, and given their choice of strategy. And that differentiated company should not cut costs to a point that it harms its ability to differentiate itself from its rivals. At the same time, neither can a differentiated company let its costs get out of control either. So you kind of got to keep your eye, whichever way you choose, you constantly got to be scanning your competitive environment, because that environment is constantly changing. This figure 5.5 over on page 169 really is aligning the organization and the strategy to your business level strategy, which we discussed some, but let's expand just a little bit more. And when a company is properly executing a well-chosen and a well-crafted business level strategy, that can give that company its competitive advantage over its potential rivals, or equally important, those rivals that are currently in its marketplace. A low-cost enterprise can make profits at price points that rivals cannot match at times, but it's hard for rivals to enter that market. Or in other words, that low-cost company can build an entry barrier into its market. So even at a low-cost position, they have the ability to charge low prices and still make profits, give that company protection against substitute goods or services. A successful differentiator is also protected against some of these competitive forces, especially when it comes to brand loyalty associated with the differentiation, which can create an important entry barrier as well, protecting the company's market from potential customers. Again, brand loyalty. We are loyal to specific brands, and we'll be willing to pay more for those brands because of that brand loyalty. And again, if you think about the Apple product, you have to look no further than that. If you think about in the baby industry, Gerber products, Pampers, may cost us more, but it's high quality, and I can't think of any other companies that we want to trust our babies' care to. So brand loyalty is an important aspect when it comes to differentiation. Let's see. Okay, lowering costs through functional strategy, economies of scale, economies of scale, economies of scale. Adopting lean production, finding those activities that really are not conducive, or those non-value activities. And let me back up just for a moment. When I think about this low-cost strategy, it's really about developing a strategy that develops superior efficiency and supports superior product reliability. And this is kind of the how, between how a company can go do this. You know, I think there was 8 or 9 different type of strategies. Number 1 was the economies of scale. Number 2 was the adoption of lean production. Number 3 was implementing quality improvement methodology that ensures the goods and the services are reliable, that materials and efforts are not being wasted, that productivity is maximized, that you have minimal to no rework, so you don't have to recreate the wheel each and every time. Number 4, streamlining that process using Six Sigma or lean improvement techniques to take out the undesirable or unnecessary steps, using information technology, leveraging innovation and technology to your competitive advantage in the world in which we operate. Number 6, some of you may be familiar with implementing just-in-time inventory control systems to minimize cost when it comes to inventory. Number 7, designing products so that they can produce and be delivered at a low cost possible. And number 8, taking steps to increase customer retention and reducing customer churn. If you think about the mobile data industry, Verizon is a leader in the industry when it comes to customer churn, having very brand loyal customers and very low customer churn. But if you look at what they're doing, again, one of the recent things they did was announce unlimited data package. Now, there's some nuances with that unlimited data packages, but nonetheless, it really is a strategy that they're using to minimize their customer churn. And again, they're the industry leaders in doing that. So when we think about the differentiation, these functional level strategies over on page 170 to achieve that superior quality, both in reliability and excellence. We talked about the innovation of the products, the customer's responsiveness, those 4 building blocks of those 4 building blocks of competitive advantage, of superior quality innovation, customer responsiveness, specific functional strategies that can be designed to help improve those is customization of the product, offering market mix to different market segments. Number 2, designing those products and marketing mix to different market segments. Number 2, designing the product offerings that have high perceived quality in terms of their function, features and performance, in addition to being reliable. And as a consumer like you, when I open that package, when I turn that device on, I expect it to be made with high quality, and I expect it to operate the way it was designed. I expect the features to be easy to understand, easy to use, easy to navigate. And as a result of that, you and I typically, as consumers in general, will pay a higher price for those well-designed products. Number 3, well-developed customer care. Amazon probably does that the best. Walmart's a very close second when it comes to taking care of the consumer. No questions asked policies, great warranties, great guarantees, take things back, do not give you a hassle is really what that is getting to. That's another one of those strategies that you can be using. Focusing number 4 on marketing, brand building, differentiation, price points, trying to create that brand loyalty. Number 5, employees. One of the most expensive things on a balance sheet, income statement sheet, financial sheets of a company is employees. And the employees, you want to hire employees as part of your overall strategy that's going to best represent your company and ensure that they are promoting that positive company image. Because in that organizational structure with the right appraisal process, the right control, the right incentives, that person is the face of that company to that customer, not the CEO who typically setting up in their ivory tower, but it is that first interface of that customer into that particular company is how that customer from that point forward will view that company. So having the right people and the right things with the right training, with the right incentives is absolutely paramount. And the last one is the control systems, ensuring that the control systems, the incentive systems, rewarding those employees for their performance, as well as holding them accountable when they do not, as well as the board of directors and the chief executive officers is absolutely paramount. Because again, that customer's view, that entire company rests solely on that first person they come in contact with. Over on page 171, winding this conversation up, we get into this thing called the blue ocean. And it's something where in some cases, the industry is trying to figure out ways to offer more value through differentiation at a lower cost than its rival. We talked about that with value innovation, and that basic proposition is that any successful company can build that have built their competitive advantage by redefining their product offering through value innovation, in essence, is creating a new market space. And again, that value innovation and pushing out that efficiency frontier we saw over in figure 5.3 on page 161. And as we think about this, this describes the process of thinking through value innovation. Excuse me, let me slow down. Over on figure 5.3, value frontier through value innovation is a process of thinking through that value innovation as searching for the blue ocean. Or in other words, it is characterized by a wide open market, a market availability, or a virgin soil, so to speak, or a virgin market that's untapped, where a company can chart its own course. And that strategy, in order to do that, was coined by Chan Kim and Renee Moring, when they indicated that managers should ask themselves these following questions, and you find those questions over on page 172, where they're looking at elimination, reducing, raising, and creating. And they give you that figure of 5.6 as a canvas for Southwest Airlines as an example. So eliminate what factors that rivals take for granted in our industry can be eliminated, thereby reducing costs. Lean manufacturing, Six Sigma is one way to do that. Reduce what factors should be reduced well below our industry, thereby lowering costs. Government regulation may be a good one there. Raise what factors should be raised above standard in an industry, thereby increasing value. Quality, superior performance, no rework is, again, Six Sigma Lean may be a good starting point. And create what factors can we create that our rivals do not offer. Product offering, a differentiation may be a good place to be looking there as they're increasing their value. And one of the most successful ways doing this is that value innovation is catch your rivals off guard and make it difficult for them to catch up. As we talked about at the very beginning of this discussion, when you're using porters, when you think about substitute products, one of the best ways to overcome substitute products is your company become that new substitute. And when you do that, it shifts the basis of competition and hopefully will result in a sustained competitive advantage for you. And it's really about this blue ocean strategy is redefining the marketplace so that that company can eliminate those factors, reduce certain factors, raise certain factors, or create certain factors that the rivals are not doing in order to maintain their competitive advantage or gain new market share. So that concludes Chapter 5 discussion. Thank you for listening, and we'll be posting Chapter 6 shortly. Have a great day.